For being here today.
I'm in good company.
Well, certainly coming in behind someone as strong and as passionate and as committed to doing the right thing and to justice. When you served as Attorney General in Florida, that was certainly a high bar that you set. And I was honored to come in after you as the Attorney General. You've touched on so many of the issues that you fought for in Florida that you are still fighting for now here in Washington, and whether that is protecting our children, protecting our law enforcement officers, protecting the rule of law. All of these things, your experiences, both personal and professional, are playing into how you are standing strong for what this country was built on in this role. And I, for one, am proud not only to be here as a United States Senator, the most junior member of this committee, but to be here and working in Washington right now with the honor of serving as a senator and watching this administration, and certainly you, bring this country back to its bearing, that we are a nation that is a government for the people with the consent of the governed. And if we are going to protect life, liberty, and their opportunity to pursue happiness, we have to guarantee safety. It has to be a mission. And that starts in our communities and our states. And I think what people are missing is the federal government has a set of laws that it is working within federal jurisdiction, that it is incumbent upon them to execute and enforce within the states. And I'm watching what has happened around this nation as a result of what has happened under the Biden administration and what they allowed to happen purposefully, whether that was rogue prosecutors, defunding police, decriminalizing crime, allowing juveniles to run rampant with no accountability, revolving jailhouse door, no respect for the rule of law. It goes on and on and on. And you're seeing that now playing out in the cities around this country. And what is very terrifying, and I think you would agree, is this is not your Democratic Party of yesteryear, where we might have said they're soft on crime. This is now a Democratic Party who is offering support for and encouraging obstructionist behavior, threats of violence against law enforcement. And as the wife of a law enforcement officer, as someone who's committed my own life as a federal prosecutor, attorney general, now as a U.S. Senator,
Judge.
It is and a judge, thank you. I think I had to demonstrate that a little bit earlier. It is horrifying to me that where we used to talk about differences in policies, where one party was thought to be tough on crime and one party was thought to be soft on crime, we're not talking about the fundamental ideals and structure on which this country was built. And I have been horrified watching the partnership between a governor in Illinois and a mayor in Chicago, and the collaboration, some might say the corruption, and the rhetoric they are using. And I have to say this because I think for somebody like you and somebody like me, it makes you extraordinarily concerned for the success and future of this country. Pritzker. He uses words like, this is an unconstitutional invasion of Illinois, militarized CBP and ICE agents to the street of Chicago to cause violence and chaos in the city. And I quote, Pritzker, people are getting detained, they're getting arrested, US citizens, making it a war zone. Pritzker, it's a war zone, and they are using tear gas and chemical agents at peaceful protesters. Pritzker, they are waging war on our people. Pritzker, we must now start calling this what it is, Trump's invasion. Not to be outdone, though, by Johnson, who says that, and I quote, law enforcement is a sickness. We have a rogue, reckless group of heavily armed mass individuals roaming throughout our city. Johnson, ICE lies and people die. Johnson, The Trump administration must end the war on Chicago. Johnson, in the coming weeks, we will use this as an opportunity to build greater resistance. I am wondering if Pritzker and Johnson understand that there are federal laws that criminalize inciting violence against law enforcement and federal agents. I am wondering if they are concerned at all about what their speech is doing and the danger it's putting not only federal agents in, that, by the way, swore an oath to protect other people, but the danger it's putting the citizens of their community in. Anytime you start pitting your own people against their own government, a government is only there at its core to protect rights and the safety of its people, that is incredibly dangerous. And I hear this rhetoric, and I think to myself, every foreign adversary of the United States of America in this country is saying thank you to the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago. Thank you for doing their jobs for them, for undermining the strength and safety of this country, and for gaslighting the American people as we are trying to shore up the stability of our communities. And that puts you in such a remarkable, important position right now. You are the top law enforcement official in this country. And you have a responsibility to call out this rhetoric. And when it violates and crosses over from free speech into inciting violence, we have to call that out. We have to remind the American people that we are dealing with the aftermath of millions of undocumented allowed to flood into this country. I know because I litigated it and I fought against it. And when I had to get through litigation documents that showed their plan was to step back and let the border be overrun, when nobody believed that was happening, it was people like us that said, this is happening. They're allowing our country to be overrun. They're allowing, through rogue prosecutors and an undermining and demoralization of law enforcement, for our cities to fall prey to criminals. They are allowing this to happen. And they are doing so, trust me, cheered on by our adversaries. And it takes someone with strength and the ability to take the criticism for 4 hours and 40 minutes and sit here resolute in your commitment to uphold the rule of law. And I know the only reason that you can do that is because what you went through in your prior life, working hand in hand with law enforcement, seeing what their families went through, holding the hands of victims, not letting these people turn our heroes into villains, and certainly not letting these people make the United States of America appear anything other than what it is. It is a country that protects, first and foremost, our people's rights, and we do so by also guaranteeing, with the consent of our government, that we'll focus on their safety. And that is why I was so glad you started out this hearing with my mission is to protect the people and prosecute violent crime, and to make sure the corruption that happened again under the last administration can never happen again. And as you sat here today and you heard the affect of the people whose friends and colleagues, and indeed even members of the judiciary, whose phones were analyzed and traced from grand jury subpoena, and they're just finding out last night, assuring them that you understand what that feels like and that you will not let it happen again, no matter how much they want to disguise accountability as weaponization. Thank you for being you, Pam the prosecutor, Pam the person that cares about this country and its people and the future of America. Thank you for being here today. Would you like to end with any comments?
Thank you, Senator Moody. And they may try to destroy our country, but they won't. They won't be successful, nor will our foreign adversaries, because we have the greatest president in Donald Trump, and he will make America safe again, and he will keep us safe. Thank you, Senator, and thank you for all you do.
And we will keep the record open for a week. I know Senator Whitehouse wanted to offer some comments for the record and any other additional questions, and we'd ask that you respond to those.
I'm sure he did.
Thank you so much. And with that, the hearing is adjourned.
Your confirmation, you've now had the opportunity to face the federal bureaucracy that you must reform to better serve the American people. As I said to Director Patel, your charter is no simple task. When you arrived, you were left with the Justice Department free fall. Senate Democrats have denied your leadership personnel. We haven't been able to confirm your Assistant Attorney General for Congressional Affairs. It's now been 7 months. All the while, Democrats complain that they can't get answers from the Office of Ledge Affairs. They have blocked the confirmation of that person. Since your confirmation, you've taken steps to institute needed reforms. Under your leadership, the Justice Department has cut funding to politicize programs to reinvest in core policing activities. Focusing on crime and getting tough on criminals is a welcome change from 4 years of Biden administration's soft on crime policies. During the Biden administration, the Justice Department failed to collect billions of dollars in criminal fines and penalties from corporate offenders. That's money should have been placed in the Crime Victims Fund, and much of the money of the past administration did collect went to the Justice Department slush funds instead of aiding victims of criminals and violent activity. My Democratic colleagues have shared concerns about funding agency and law enforcement, but generally haven't supported funding programs. Under the Democrat leadership, the COPS reauthorization was held over in committee at least 8 times before the 118th Congress concluded. It never received a vote in this committee. More recently, Democrats have refused to support fundamental Justice Department programs like Protect Safe Neighborhoods. And last week, Democrats again blocked most of the Police Week bills from passing the Senate, even though they passed out of this committee unanimously. In contrast to these indefensible positions, the judiciary provisions in the Republican reconciliation bill made hundreds of millions of dollars available to the Justice Department to combat crime. Attorney General Bondi, you've also created task force to attack the problems left by your predecessor. You've created a team to review the overwhelming evidence of political weaponization by federal law enforcement, including the discredited Crossfire Hurricane investigations. Your weaponization working group has worked with my staff to bring forward resolutions for whistleblowers, and I commend you and your staff efforts to find solutions for these patriots. I understand the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias has done an investigation on how the Biden administration weaponized the government against people of faith. I look forward to your next report on that subject. Now, you've also shuttered a certain task force that was a stain on this country, the Foreign Influence Task Force. Democrats have cried about closing this misleadingly named unit. The task force was involved in undermining my and Senator Johnson's Biden family investigation. Instead of rooting out foreign influence, the task force became a political weapon. And speaking of political weapons, I'm now going to address examples of political weaponization in the previous administration. Most recently, I and Senator Johnson made public information relating to Arctic Foss expansive targeting of Republicans. And on Monday, just yesterday, because of our investigative work, the FBI disclosed that the Biden administration used Arctic frost to target Republican senators, including several senators on this very committee. This is an outrage, an unconstitutional breach, and ought to be immediately addressed by you and Director Patel. It's also a clear example of why the Justice Department has had to fire personnel who you hear Democrats defending. While on the taxpayer's dime, these now fired employees not only weaponized law enforcement, but some of them also retaliated against patriotic whistleblowers. These are indefensible acts. Now I've obtained additional weaponization records thanks to brave whistleblowers that predate Arctic Frost. I've obtained documents created by then Supervisory Special Agent Tebow, dated March 2, 2017. The title of this document is quote unquote Trump, and it appears to relate to matters different than Crossfire Hurricane. This document discusses a rumor at FBI headquarters that the FBI's Washington field office was leaning towards opening a case on the Trump campaign. Tebow noted they weren't close to opening an investigation, but did say this, quote, "What are we doing? Aggressively seeking out open source information, human intelligence info that could predicate a case," end of quote. You see, less than 2 months into the Trump's first presidency, the partisan Comey FBI was very hard at work trying to manufacture another case against Trump. Tebow and the FBI eventually got their wish in April 2022 with the opening of Arctic Frost. This was a political fishing expedition to get Trump at all costs, just like Crossfire Hurricane. And of course, it's a disgrace to the taxpayers. Whistleblowers have provided me with another document. This document is a 2017 case, updated, also drafted by then Supervisor Special Agent Tebow. This is a case update for CR 15, the now disbanded and discredited public corruption squad at FBI's Washington field office, which says, quote, McAuliffe case, Steve Sullivan, Chief Financial Officer of Teneo, was interviewed in New York City. Info provided seemed to confirm Teneo was used as a pass-through for Doug Band to pay former President of the United States, end of quote. Doug Band was deputy assistant to then President Clinton and continued to work for him in post-presidency. Therefore, it's pretty clear that the reference to the President of the United States is Bill Clinton. The document further notes additional interviews the FBI planned to conduct as part of the case. This information confirms there was an FBI case on McAuliffe, and it indicates the Clintons and their associates were relevant to it. Did the FBI throw its resources behind this matter just like it did against Trump and his associates? A legitimate question. Or did they sweep it under the rug? A legitimate question. So, General Bondi, I'd like to have you provide me with all the records relating to these matters for further verification. Lastly, whistleblowers have provided me additional records related to the Biden FBI political conduct against Peter Navarro. The first document is a request for physical surveillance on Navarro the day the FBI arrested him. The second document is a timeline of that surveillance. When Navarro, the FBI didn't arrest him at his house, which was literally right next to the FBI headquarters. Instead, they surveilled him and his fiancee all morning, starting at his home, following them to the airport, and then arrested him in public at the Reagan airport. The way Navarro was treated is unnecessary. General Bondi, I would like you to provide me all records relating to this matter. Attorney General Bondi, this Congress, I've made public one document after another, one whistleblower disclosure after another, one example of weaponization after another. So to our average constituent, this is all history, but it's all pointing out the wrong of government, using the power of government to go after people, they're political people you don't like. We're pointing this all out because we can't have this repeated in the United States. We want to end to it right now, whether we have Republican or Democrat administrations. All evidence of your predecessors' total failures. It's time for accountability. And I look forward to hearing about your success in that regard. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Chairman Grassley, for holding this oversight hearing. Welcome, Attorney General Bondi. I'm glad that we are following this committee's longstanding tradition of regular oversight hearings with the Attorney General, the Director of the FBI, and the Secretary of Homeland Security. These hearings have never been more important as President Trump turns the full force of the federal government on Chicago and other American cities. The assault on the city I am proud to represent is just one example of how President Trump and Attorney General Bondi shut down justice at the Department of Justice even before the president's party, controlling the White House, Senate, and House of Representatives, shut down the government. The Attorney General has systematically weaponized our nation's leading law enforcement agency to protect President Trump and his allies and attack his opponents and, sadly, the American people. You have purged hundreds of senior career officials since you first appeared before us. These men and women had dedicated their careers to protecting the American people. As a result, the department has lost literally thousands of years of law enforcement expertise. To be specific, you disbanded the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force and the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team, despite the growing threat of foreign election interference and the drastic rise in cryptocurrency crimes. You forced out almost 75% of the Civil Rights Division's career attorneys, while hate crimes are on the rise. You fired more than 100 immigration judges, while the immigration case backlog is more than 3 million. You cut the public integrity section from 30 prosecutors to 2, while political corruption skyrockets. During your confirmation hearing, I asked you about your many potential conflicts of interest as a former lobbyist. You responded under oath, quote, "You will consult with career ethics officials within the department and make the appropriate decision," end of quote. But the Justice Department then removed those career ethics officials and put in their place inexperienced political appointees beholden to President and you. And you've effectively shut down the Office of Professional Responsibility, which investigates misconduct by Department of Justice attorneys. Now, with these ethical guardrails out of the way, corruption has run rampant at the Department of Justice. Although you've been a registered foreign agent for Qatar, you did not recuse yourself from signing off on President Trump's solicitation of a free jet from the royal family, even though this gift was clearly illegal. Connections to Attorney General Bondi seem to yield more favorable outcomes for defendants. At least 2 long-running federal prosecutions were abruptly dropped after the defendants hired your brother. It's no surprise that Ed Morton, the failed U.S. Attorney nominee you appointed as senior official, said, quote, "No MAGA left behind." Our nation's top law enforcement agency has become a shield for the president and his political allies when they engage in misconduct. Last year, President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, was allegedly recorded accepting a $50,000 bag of cash in exchange for promising immigration enforcement-related contracts. Under your leadership, the investigation into Mr. Homan was dropped. After President Trump pardoned nearly 1,600 January 6 insurrectionists, including more than 600 charged with assaulting or impeding law enforcement, the Department of Justice is arguing in court that these pardons provide immunity for wholly unrelated crimes in multiple cases. Jared Weiss was filmed on January 6th, encouraging his fellow rioters to attack the Metropolitan Police Department officers. And he said, "F them, kill them." What happened to Mr. Weiss? He's been hired by you as a senior advisor. In February, you said the Epstein client list was, quote, "sitting on my desk right now for review." 8 months later, you still haven't produced these files, and a credible whistleblower told my office that FBI agents were directed to flag any records in which President Trump was mentioned. The Department of Justice ordered the dismissal of corruption charges against the former New York City Mayor Eric Adams in a corrupt backroom deal to secure his cooperation with the president's immigration agenda. Acting U.S. Attorney Daniel Sassoon, a Republican appointed by President Trump, resigned in protest. Acting U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Eric Siebert, a Republican appointed by President Trump, was forced to resign because he didn't believe there was sufficient evidence to indict New York Attorney General Letitia Adams or former FBI Director James Comey. In his place, President Trump installed his former personal attorney, someone with no prosecutorial experience, to indict Director Comey, which she did. She joins a network of unqualified MAGA loyalists masquerading as federal prosecutors, like Alina Habba, who said she would use her position to, quote, "turn New Jersey red," close quote, and Sigil Chattah, who once said that a black political opponent was, quote, "should be hanging from an effing crane," end of quote. The president and attorney general attempted to bypass the Senate to install these unqualified extremists. Where do you find these people? Courts have ruled that both Ms. Habba and Ms. Chattah are serving in their roles illegally, jeopardizing countless prosecutions by your office. Why? And that's just one example of how the Department of Justice is making America less safe. Attorney General Bondi shut down the Organized Crime and Drug Enforcement Task Force, OSADEF, which has dismantled thousands of criminal organizations. And you diverted thousands of FBI, DEA, and ATF agents and DOJ prosecutors from their critical missions to carry out the president's mass deportation agenda. Attorney General Bondi, not surprisingly, federal drug prosecutions have dropped to the lowest level in decades. Let me repeat that. Federal prosecutions for drug crimes have dropped to the lowest level in decades on your watch. Department of Justice has also unilaterally terminated 373 grants that provide critical funding to state and local law enforcement to the tune of $500 million. The 2026 Trump budget would slash the high-intensity drug trafficking areas program known as HIDA by more than a third, from $300 million to $196 million. Instead of taking common sense steps that have proven to help reduce crime, Attorney General, you're focusing on helping President Trump play strongman on television. He has illegally deployed troops to Chicago and other American citizens and has threatened to send more. The Justice Department defends this dubious legal basis for these deployments and diverts DOJ personnel and their components to assist in these efforts. These deployments basically target Democratic-run cities and Democratic leaders ignoring many Republican-led areas of our country with even higher crime rates, and making clear that this is for political theater, not public safety. One particular chaotic raid in Chicago Tuesday last week, aided by the FBI and ATF, which you supervise. In the middle of the night, federal agents pulled women and children out of their beds, crashed down the doors to their homes, destroyed their apartments, zip-tied children and others, and detained immigrants and U.S. citizens alike for hours in vans. When one witness complained about the treatment of the small children, an agent laughed at her and said, "F them kids." On Friday, a federal judge appointed by President Trump held that deploying the National Guard in Portland is illegal. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller accused her of, quote, legal insurrection, close quote. At a time of rising threats to federal judges, this kind of language is inexcusable. Last week, the President and Secretary Hegseth summoned senior military officials to a political pep rally at Quantico, where the President said he wanted to use American cities as, quote, training grounds for our military. Training grounds for our military. To fight the, quote, enemy within. Chicago is not the enemy. Our fellow Americans are not the enemy. It is abhorrent for the President, who is supposed to represent all Americans regardless of political party, to describe anyone who disagrees with them in this manner. To my Republican colleagues who claim the previous administration weaponized the Department of Justice, President Biden retained President Trump's FBI Director Christopher Wray, who President Trump then fired. President Biden never directed the Attorney General to prosecute his political opponents. President Biden never fired his own political appointees for refusing to prosecute his targets. What has taken place since January 20th, 2025 would make even President Nixon recoil. This is your legacy, Attorney General Bondi. In 8 short months, you have fundamentally transformed the Justice Department and left an enormous stain in American history. It will take decades to recover. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Would you please rise so I can give you swear? Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please be seated and give us your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley and Ranking Member Durbin, and every member of this committee. I'm grateful for the opportunity to testify in front of you today. First, please join me in remembering, as you said, Chairman Grassley, all the Jewish people who lost their lives in the October 7th attacks 2 years ago today. Also, please let's pray for all the hostages and the families of all of those individuals. They are a critical reminder of our central mission here at the Department of Justice, protecting the safety and security of the American people. That is why, even when the government is otherwise shut down because of the Democrats, the department's law enforcement officers and prosecutors are hard at work fighting crime, keeping our streets safe, and protecting you from the threats, foreign and domestic. When I was confirmed as the 87th Attorney General of the United States, I took office with 2 main goals: to end the weaponization of justice and return the department to its core mission of fighting violent crime. As to ending the weaponization of justice, we learned that former FBI secretly investigated you and your colleagues. Why? They wanted to take President Trump off the playing field. They were playing politics with law enforcement powers and will go down as a historic betrayal of public trust. This is the kind of conduct that shatters the American people's faith in our law enforcement system. We will work to earn that back every single day. We are returning to our core mission of fighting real crime. While there is more work to do, I believe in 8 short months, we have made tremendous progress towards those ends. Our federal surges in Washington, D.C. and Memphis are a perfect example of how the Department of Justice should operate. We created strong partnerships with local leadership, working hand in hand with both cities to send resources where they were needed most. The results speak for themselves. We have made more than 3,800 arrests here in Washington while seizing more than 365 illegal guns. In Memphis, we have already made more than 300 arrests and close to 80 illegal guns in just a week. We are replicating that tough on crime approach throughout this country. Under the leadership of Director Kash Patel, the FBI is doing outstanding investigative work to keep American people safe. The FBI just conducted a months-long operation called Summer Heat, which resulted in over 8,600 arrests from June to September. More than 6,500 arrests fell under the FBI's violent crime and gang program. Under the leadership of Administrator Terry Cole, the DEA has seized 47.9 million fentanyl pills and 4,500 kilos of fentanyl powder. That represents 370 million deadly doses, 370 million. The DEA is dismantling violent cartel drug trafficking networks across this country, including the seizure of nearly 470 million in criminal assets. Under the leadership of Gadi Saralta, our U.S. Marshals have been the tip of the spear on federal surges and protecting judges and elected officials. Our Marshals have arrested more than 51,000 fugitives nationwide since January 20th. Under the leadership of Acting Director Dan Driscoll, ATF has taken more than 23,000 illegal guns off our streets. 3,400 of those guns have been linked to trafficking between the U.S. and Mexico. My attorneys have done incredible work advancing President Trump's agenda and protecting the executive branch from judicial overreach. We've been sued more than 400 times since January 20th. Judges have issued more than 90 temporary restraining orders against us, more than the previous several administrations combined. Despite the unprecedented degree of activism we've seen from the lower courts, we have never ignored a court order. And why would we? We have secured a historic 22 victories at the Supreme Court alone, with more to come. Our civil rights attorneys are fighting discrimination and anti-Semitism. Our criminal attorneys are prosecuting violent criminals and foreign terrorists every single day. I look forward to continuing this work at the Department of Justice, and I look forward to testifying before you today. Thank you, Chairman.
I forgot to turn on the microphone. Let me start over again. We have 10-minute rounds. I've asked Senator Blackburn to chair between 10:30 and 11. I hope that we can have good decorum during this hearing, treat each other with respect. General Bondi, just in case you get cut off with something that you don't get to answer your question when that senator's done, if you ask me for a little bit of time, not a lot of time, but a little bit of time to finish your answer, I'd be glad to give that to you. So starting myself, you inherited a bloated bureaucracy. It requires reorientation to better serve your mission of the department. That would include reassessing grants disguised to help Americans, but many were partisan pet projects. It also requires reallocation of resources to better serve the American people. On this issue, I've got two questions. What updates can you share with the committee about your review and grant DOJ and grants that DOJ has reassessed? Just give us some examples, don't I know?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. During my appearance at the department's budget hearings, I acknowledged that some grants were mistakenly terminated, and we have made a process to correct that. All grant termination appeals will be individually considered for alignment with our current policies, which are strengthening law enforcement and protecting victims. Recipients are given the opportunity to appeal a grant termination consistent with the rules by writing to the Assistant Attorney General. Of the 5,800 discretionary grants that were reviewed, only 376, approximately 7%, were terminated. So far, OJP has turned back on 18 awards, 17 appeals have been denied, and the rest are actively being reviewed, with decisions expected soon.
My colleagues on the other side claim that your department has reallocated resources to immigration enforcement, and it's had a negative impact on law enforcement. We know that drugs and crimes are very much a part of immigration enforcement, so these attacks are clearly off the mark. Explain your view of these misguided assertions.
Chairman, every day our FBI, DEA, ATF, and now U.S. Marshals working on a task force with Homeland Security are out there keeping Americans safe and getting illegal aliens out of our country, many of whom have committed violent crimes in this country. Our agents will continue to fight violent crime in this country, working hand in hand. One example is right here in Washington, D.C. We have the D.C. task force that has been incredibly successful